Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is Joshua Kahn with the news. It's been a slow news day around town, and I'm coming to the end of the night shift. So I thought...
Josh, I got this blueberry muffin with extra crumbles.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. You know, the only thing better would actually be...
And this non-fat, sugar-free, vanilla, shaken iced latte.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't usually want iced drinks, but right now...
I also turned down the heating pad I placed under your chair since you were getting hot. Your feet get cold.
CM, I think...
You need HR? I'll make the call.
You're listening to Derry Public Radio.
This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are joined by a very special guest, an award-winning filmmaker, actor, cinephile, co-host of the Horror Movie Survival Guide podcast, and currently fundraising for her Stephen King Dollar Baby short film, I Know What You Need. Please welcome to the show, Julia Marchese.
Hello!
Julia, thank you so much for taking the time in the middle of, I'm sure, a hectic fundraising time for you to come and talk to us.
I am absolutely thrilled. I love talking about Stephen King, so getting to talk about him and you guys wanting to, because my friends are kind of sick of it by now, because it's been a lot, and so now I can talk to people who really want to hear what I have to say about Stephen King, so it's really exciting.
We are here for geeking out about Stephen King, for
Excellent.
Sure.
All right, before we really dive into this, we have a couple of questions that we like to ask everyone that we interview. They're very important questions to us. The first is, what was your very first introduction to Stephen King? Adaptation, book, comic, anything?
The first Stephen King book that I ever read was Pet Sematary. And that was when I was 11 years old, and that blew my mind, and it went on to It right after that. And then It was even like more of what I was, and so it's still one of my favorites. So Pet Sematary, the book, got me into Pet Sematary, the movie. And before that, I'd always been kind of a fraidy cat. Like, I didn't like scary things. Like, I couldn't even watch the Thriller video. It was bad. So then I really liked Pet Sematary, and I really got into it. And then this started this whole Stephen King, like the first wave of Stephen King obsessions. And I know I was a little too young for it, but I also know that I wasn't, though, because I did this big, I just kind of went from like Judy Blume, like right to Stephen King. There was kind of no in between. Like, there was never like a Goosebumps phase or anything like that. Like, I just went right to the hard stuff.
That's hardcore. Have you gone back to Pet Sematary, like, as an adult?
The book or the movie?
Book?
Yes.
Does it feel different reading it as an adult? Like, because I imagine at 11, you know, those hard-hitting things of like grief and mourning are hard to get by.
I think it'd be different if I had children. I think I would see that story totally different. And because it's all about losing a child and how that affects you, and, you know, this kind of grief. And that's something that, you know, nobody wants to think about, but something that I'm childless, so I can't even imagine. Yeah, how sad that would be. So yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem very different to me. I guess maybe I was always kind of a warped weirdo.
I have cats, so it's definitely different.
Basically the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like having kids, right? Do you have what we call a Stephen King moment? And that's something that was either disturbing or intriguing, something that stuck with you. It could be something that is mundane or more overt from one of his books or movies that has always stayed with you.
It's going to sound silly. So I love the Dark Tower series, and we can talk about that because I have a whole thing with that. But Roland, of course, is my favorite character. And the scene where he gets to have soda for the first time, it's just this moment of like, he just loses his fucking mind for a second, and he's just like, oh my God, and he can't get enough of it. And I was like, that's one of the most humanizing moments of Roland in the whole thing. And it's something about it delights me. And it's such like a tiny scene that I'm sure nobody else cares about. But I was like, yeah, that would totally blow your mind. Soda.
I had a very similar moment with Roland when he discovers guns and ammo in America.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the best day of his life.
Oh,
And as I understand it, you like binge read The Dark Tower when you discovered it?
Okay, so what happened was that, I'd been a Stephen King fan for all my life, but I'd never tackled the master work. And so finally I decided that had to be done. So I started to read it. I got to the 11th stanza in Song of Susanna, where they're about to meet somebody very exciting. And I was like, I can't turn the page. I'm too excited. I don't want this to end. How can I prolong it? So I was like, okay, he has all these books that are related to the Dark Tower. And, you have characters coming in and whatnot. So if I read them all, then I'll understand every single reference. So over the last 2.5 years, I've been on a quest to read everything related to the Dark Tower, which is over 40 books and short stories. And it's been the greatest literary puzzle piece of my entire life, because I don't know still how everything fits together. But knowing that there's this like puzzle piece that we're putting that's going to put, have this beautiful thing at the end, it's incredible. It's amazing. And I'm still not done. Like there keep being more. And I'm like, this one, because in my head, I feel like both Castle Rock and Derry are connected because they show up in a bunch of other things. So then I'm like, okay, anything that takes place or mentions Castle Rock or Derry has to be. So then it just keeps like getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm like, aren't you done? And I'm like, no, man, I'm still going. But it's wonderful.
That's amazing.
So then I still haven't finished the Dark Tower series. So like when I finish everything, then I'll finish the series and then go on to the Marvel omnibuses and the companions.
Nice.
So we're going to have to talk again.
Yeah. Please
Okay.
reach out to us so we can do this interview again when you finish the final book.
I would be delighted, of course.
Have you picked up the graphic novels by chance?
Yes. So I have, those are after I finish. So they're
Nice.
sitting by my side. They're enormous. I'm very excited to see. And honestly, this is going to probably upset some geeks out there, but it's the only Marvel omnibus I will ever buy.
That's the only one I own.
Really? Yeah. I'm not really a comic book kind of person, but I was like, I will. Yes. I don't care how much it costs. Please bring it on.
When you sent us your information, I checked out your movie Out of Print. I watched the trailer for it. It looks amazing, so I need to find it and watch it.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Is it?
And and a bunch of other sites. It's on Canopy and a bunch of other things. So.
That's outstanding. Well, I know what I'm doing after we get done here.
Excellent.
So what started your love of filmmaking in the first place?
So I've always been an actor ever since I was a kid, but I've always loved film. I was a drama and film major in college. And then I directed stage plays, but I'd never directed film before. And so it wasn't until Out of Print that I was like, I really decided to step up to this, because it was a documentary that I felt like only I could make in this way. Because it was right when we were switching over from 35 millimeter to digital, and it was kind of being swept under the rug. And I really didn't feel that was right, because I feel like it's this gigantic shift in culture. You changing from a physical medium to a digital medium, and what are the long-term effects of that? You think about how fast our tech upgrades and how things get obsolete, and that changes everything. So I crowdfunded that film as well, and went on to make the film, got to interview amazing people, Edgar Wright and Ryan Johnson and John Landis and Joe Dante and Stuart Gordon, and on, amazing people. And then got to make the film half on digital, half on 35. I got a 35 millimeter print made, which now lives the Academy Archive, and then it just played kind of where it deserved to play, kind of universities and art house cinemas and little archives, and that was my first film. So this is a total shift, because I'm going from documentary to narrative feature that I'm also adapting, so it's a whole different ball of wax. I think I'm up to the task.
I'm so excited to follow your journey making this movie. Speaking of adaptations, because they're such a different beast, especially with a fan base as loving and dedicated as Stephen King. So of the Stephen King adaptations that exist, what is your favorite, or in your opinion, the best Stephen King adaptation?
I have to pick one.
No, that's so all the questions that Josh ever asks me, I usually have 5 answers.
Right.
Okay.
You fit in.
I'm really used to having the most amount of answers.
Okay. So I use my podcast actually to watch a lot of because there's actually quite a few Stephen King films I haven't seen. Like I just recently watched Cujo for the first time. I just recently watched Christine for the first time and fell in love with Keith Gordon. Like I couldn't even tell you. Oh my goodness. I love the new It Chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be specific. Chapter 1. But I think I love that so much because it feels so much like Stand By Me, right? It's just kind of this nastier version of Stand By Me, but you still get this feeling with the kids. And that's the most important part, is this connection. And it being one of my very favorites, although I love the 1990 version and Tim Curry and Dennis Christopher and all these amazing actors, but it's a TV movie. So I'm a firm believer that, TV is different now, but then you can't really do Stephen King right on television because it needs to be gory and violent and shocking. And if you don't get that, it doesn't come across correctly. So I think that this Chapter 1 really did that well with, you have this very shocking violence, but then there also, I believe, all these children and their friendships, and everybody was just kind of exactly how I pictured them in the book. And Sophia Lillis is luminous as Beverly. It's awesome. Pennywise too, and then there's that whole like kind of sort of hot for Pennywise thing that went around. And I was like, I kind of get it. It's embarrassing to it.
That's okay. Josh was trying to ask me my opinion of the new Stand miniseries trailer, and all I could get out was that I'm so excited because there's a Skarsgård in it. And he was counting on me to have a real answer, and I'm like, no.
That's a real answer.
Full stop. That's it. And then we just talked about True Blood for like an hour.
Yeah.
Now, I recently binge listened the last few episodes of your podcast where you were watching several Stephen King movies. And I just want to take a second to say I'm so happy you and I are on the same page about one of the most divisive things in a Stephen King adaptation, the ending of The Mist.
That's the best ending ever.
It's the most amazing ending ever.
Well, because it's really in my top 5 now. And if I'm such a sicko, like the most un-Hollywood endings are my favorite ones, right? Like those ones blow my mind. And that one, like if you would have seen me watching it, because it was my first time watching it, and it gets to the end, and I was like this, just like hands pressed to face, a giant smile on my face, so happy. And I was like, yeah. But, my co-host was like, no. Terrible. I was like, well, I don't know. And when we posted that episode, there was the like, people were like, oh, I was on board until the end. And then there were people who were like, I was on board. And then the end, and it was the difference in opinion. I get it. It's because you're expecting the story, right? It has a whole different ending, a very hopeful ending. And this, not a hopeful ending. But the interesting thing was that we did the last 4. We did Cell, Cujo, Dr. Sleep, and The Mist. And every 4 of those, the ending's different. They changed it every time.
I did not realize that.
Have you watched the black and white version of The Mist?
I haven't, but I hear it's amazing.
It
so
is. I have that.
Frank Darabont, but he's the original like dollar baby god, right? Like he was the one who made the dollar baby. Stephen King saw it and was like, "You, sir," and then like so the rest is history. So I think that's kind of the underlying pull of all of the dollar baby ones, like because part of the contract is that you have to send him a copy of the finished film. So he's going to watch it. So that's kind of the cool thing about making it, is like anyone involved in it, Stephen King's going to see it, like see your end product and your version of his story. And that he still wants to watch those is amazing.
Yeah, that's so wild. I wish I was popular and good enough that people would just remake my things and send them to me. That'd be amazing.
But I think of it from Stephen King's point of view, and because you're taking the same source material, and then everybody's going to have a different version of that story in their head. So the version of I Know What You Need that he wrote is not going to be the version that I make, because it's filtered through my brain, which is a totally different brain. But that's the cool thing about even something like we'll take the 2 Pet Cemeteries, right? The new one, which we will overpass, and the original, the Mary Lambert, which is amazing. But that's the exact same source material, but then the movie's just completely different. And so I find that fascinating. And I'm sure he does too, is to say, I wrote this with what I had, but then you see it totally differently. And the contract has no boundaries as far as what you can change, what you can't change. You can do whatever you want with it, and just take a kernel of it and run with it if you want to. But I felt very strongly it needs to be very similar. So a lot of the dialogue is word for word, and it's a lot of just kind of me filling in gaps in the story more than anything else. But I want, as a constant reader, like I know how important it is to have it be faithful and also have it made with love. And there is that kind of pull of like, I could change the ending. Like, what if this happened? Or what if she did this? And, but that's not that's not the ending. That's his, I want it to be his ending. So my ending is pretty similar.
Nice. Now, there are a lot of pitfalls you can go into with adaptations. So we talked about the best. Now let's talk about the worst. What do you think are the bottom barrel Stephen King adaptations that you hope you will avoid being anywhere near?
There are some that I will never watch again. That I've seen once, and I'm like, okay, never see that one again. The New Pet Cemetery, as we mentioned, I just felt that the actor who played Lewis just didn't connect with him at all. Didn't care. He didn't seem really affected. Like, I didn't buy it. And so, when you have Dale Midkiff, who is Cell in Lewis Creed, and I'm like on board. And this, the new one. Same with the Chloe Grace Moretz Carrie. She was just not. She never experienced being a nerd. Like, never experienced being bullied. I don't think so. I feel like she got it. Like Sissy Spacek did. And then Dreamcatcher is quite a film. I read the book and I was like, ooh, yeah, this is going to be on my low end of the Stephen King scale. And I understand he's like just getting out of his accident. He's like getting back on his feet. And this is the novel that did it. So I will 100% say yay to that novel for that. But it's just not very good.
We've talked about this before. I struggle with Dreamcatcher, and I'll go back and watch it every few years because I love Damian Lewis. I still don't know how I feel about the movie, though. It's so... I get something out of it. I don't know what it is, though.
And I'm going to throw another question to you. Besides, I Know What You Need. If there was if you could see an adaptation of something that has not been adapted yet, what would you like to see?
The Talisman.
Hell yes.
I love The Talisman and Black House. Jack Sawyer is one of my very favorite characters. I would really like to push for a Jack Sawyer, Jake Chambers team up.
Yeah.
Where they go on Huck and Finn like adventures in the territories.
Do you believe that they are twinners?
Oh, I never thought of it. Possibly. Yeah. The Talisman's amazing, and I understand why it would be hard to make because it's real special effects heavy, and that would be an intense one. But it's awesome you would be able to do it, and then if you wanted to do the sequel right after. It's not one that gets a lot of play. Also, there are ones like I love The Long Walk. It's one of my very, very favorites. I know that there's like one in production, quote unquote, which I don't know how far along they are with that. It makes me a little nervous though because it's very precious to me, and I feel like it'd be a very hard film to translate to the screen, especially when you have so much of it in a character's head and it's about how he's feeling and what he's thinking. And I'm sure it can be done correctly. So I would like to see it, but I'm a little nervous to see it.
Did you see the Dark Tower movie?
I have not. People have told me not to watch that movie, so I will not.
I would say watch it if you can completely and fully detach yourself from Roland, which I can't do. So.
Well, I mean, Idris Elba as Roland seems completely amazing to me. It's the Matthew McConaughey factor that I have a problem with.
Yeah, Idris Elba was rock solid.
I would see him again. I would love for them to try that again, and he can be Roland because he did a fantastic job. I couldn't deal with the flag of it all. And not that he's bad, but
McConaughey's just not a scary guy.
Right. He's not. And just the approach they took, I wasn't a huge fan of, but I watched it because I have to watch all of those.
I would really like to see Michael Shannon.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
As Flag, because he can be scary.
Oh my gosh. He would be perfect.
All right. That's my ship casting. Michael Shannon, if you hear this,
please
you should be Flag.
Put it out there. Yeah.
I want to talk for a minute about your podcast because obviously we love podcasts. So you have Horror Movie Survival Guide is the name of your podcast. It's a weekly podcast where you do deep dives into your favorite horror movies. And I'm curious what draws you so strongly to the horror genre?
So I guess, I feel like there's this kind of catharsis in it, like this kind of feeling. I think it's very similar to like riding on an amusement park ride where you get this exhilaration, but it's a safe exhilaration because you're not going to be hurt. It's all going to go away when the movie's over. So it's this way to be excited. And especially when you watch it in a crowded audience, which I know is impossible right now. But when you do, but it is honestly, like if you were to ask me what are my favorite things in the world, one of them would be watching a horror movie opening night with a packed crowd who's going bananas, which I did for it. And it was just, people were losing their minds and it was amazing. And then I went back and I saw it like 5 times in the theater to experience that, because people were walking out and like, it was really incredible. But then I felt creepy because I realized like I was feeding on fear like Pennywise. And
That's beautiful.
And then, so the podcast started. So my original co-host was I have 2 best friends who I've done the show with, Marion and Terry. Marion I met in college, and she had never seen a horror movie ever. So I decided to show her Nightmare on Elm Street and see what she thought, and she loved it. And the thing that she loved most about it is Nancy and what a badass she is, and that she has this survivalist, she's like, I'm into survival, right? Like her idea is like, I'm just going to do it. And I'm not, like she's my favorite final girl. So Marion was like, is this a thing? And I was like, yeah, the final girl. Like, so she said, if we watch enough horror movies, maybe we'll learn how to survive. So that was the impetus. So we ended up our senior year of college. We watched every horror movie in the horror section of our local video store. The Notebook. It was intense. So we had like a rating system and the whole bit. That was the impetus for the show. And then Marion left and Terry came on, and Terry's a newbie to the horror genre. So pretty much everything she's seeing for the first time. And the first horror movie I showed her was Hellraiser, which I was a little nervous about because I was like, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. That's a great intro.
That Uncle Frank came on, because Terry's thing is creepy uncles. So like he opened the door and she was like, oh, Uncle Frank. And I was like, oh my.
What a very specific thing that you wouldn't run into often.
Yeah. So she really loved it. And then I've never met another horror fan that she laughs at it. So we were watching it. The end, like Jesus wept she was laughing. And I was like, wow, I thought you would be like scarred, but she was having a grand time. So she discovered that she's a huge horror hound as well.
I am dying to ask you then 2 questions. First,
okay.
Best Nightmare on Elm Street.
First one.
I'm a 2 lover. I love 1, but 2 is my favorite.
Really? You love 2?
I love 2.
Interesting.
I just love him as the final girl. I think that's so cool. Best Halloween.
First one. Still, I'm pretty OG. See, Halloween is not my favorite of series, and that is because they never give us the proper Michael Myers explanation that I want. Like, I can shoot him 6 times, he's going to get up and walk away. Why? He's pure evil. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but what? Like, it just doesn't. And the specific. This is so. See, this is my thing. Like, into like tiny little specific moments in movies. But when Michael Myers puts the sheet over with the glasses, what is that? I'm like, if he's just pure evil and all he wants to do is kill people, what is that? That's like a whole different. And no Halloween fan I've met can ever answer that question. If you can answer that question, I'd be delighted to know. Like, what is going through Michael's head when he does that?
He wants to look smart.
I think it's just because he's like a fun, wacky guy.
Both of our answers suck.
Michael Myers is just like, he thinks everyone's having as much fun as he is.
See,
that is what I think.
So those aren't my favorite either, but I think of them often because I love Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which it was meant to be an anthology, but they did a sequel first.
Yeah,
so it threw
you can't
people
do
off.
that, man. You can't be like, we're going to be a wacky anthology series now. Just kidding.
Amen. See, this is why I like Julia. We are on the same page.
I know it's a very divisive film. I know people are super into it. The Tom Atkins factor, I get it, but I feel like that's fine. It's the same thing. Like, I love Friday the 13th for the final chapter. The final chapter.
Yeah.
Right.
We all knew that was a lie.
Yes.
Man, let's get into the real meat of why we brought you on the show today, because you're doing something amazing. You get to do a Dollar Baby. Having the chance to be granted a Dollar Baby has to be an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
Prior to this moment, because obviously this is like peak King stuff, do you have anything like a crowning King achievement or collectible or anything like your prized King moment or possession?
Well, I actually went on a pilgrimage to Maine last autumn because I'd never been there and I'd read about it, all these years. You go to like Pownell and Portland and Bangor and all these places. And it was magical. It was like walking through his novels. I went on the SK tours in Bangor, and they take you, I mean, because Bangor is basically Derry.
Yeah.
It's all kind of laid out exactly like in the story. So I'm like, oh my God, there's the canals. Oh my God, there's the Paul Bunyan. There's the storm pipe. There's, Stan's bird bath. Like, it's all there. So I was just losing my mind. Pennywise's drain, and like, oh, there's Bev's house, and it's amazing. So you got to see Stephen King's house, which is epic, and just driving through that state, because I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and then I moved to California. So I'd actually never seen a changing of the leaves before.
Oh, wow.
So it was my first time seeing that, and it was so beautiful, but it also made me very angry that I lived this long. I had not seen one, and I was like, people get to see this every year, so lucky. But the beauty of the state is just like, you drive, and there's a little river, and like there's this beautiful house, and there's this field and meadow, and they're just everywhere. And I live right smack dab in the middle of Hollywood, so like that is as far away as you get, kind of geographically, and I just was in love with it. Like, those were I was only there for like a week, but it was magic.
That sounds really, that's a high on my list of things I want to do, is go take the tour.
Yeah, Jamie and Stu, who run the tour, are incredible, and so we're in the tour bus, and I'm like in the front seat wearing my Stephen King rule shirt, like bouncing up and down like a little girl. And we're in the Pet Cemetery, and then the band turns the corner, and I see the flag sign, and I went, flags, and just screamed completely involuntarily, and then clapped my hands over my mouth. I just couldn't help it. And he was like, yeah, we'll get there. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm sorry.
That's amazing. That is fandom you cannot contain.
No.
When you involuntarily scream from a flag's name, yeah, that's pretty hardcore.
So Josh and I had not read the short story before we got the chance to talk with you. So we both recently read it. And I'm curious, what drew you to do I Know What You Need?
Okay, so being horror fans, I think you will understand this mindset. So there's a certain type of girl, say that kind of girl is me, who finds someone like Martin from Martin, or Eric Binford from Fade to Black, or Norman Bates, this kind of adorable, fucked up psycho. But I mean, I'm not into Norman Bates like after the reveal. Like, I'm talking like before. Like, when he's just this really adorable. Like, you can tell something's wrong with him, but you don't really know what it is, and you kind of want to like cuddle him. Mm-hmm. That's Edward, and like even it was within the first paragraphs when he was describing Edward. I was like, yep. That's for me. Like, and so I was really in Elizabeth's shoes the whole time, because I was like, yes, I'm into this boy. I understand something weird is going on, but I'm totally into it. So for me, it's this complete, even though there's, it's this line between love and obsession, and how interesting and malleable that is. But it also, to me, Edward has these powers that in Stephen King, when you have, we don't know exactly what Edward's power is, push or shining or whatever he has. You use them for these big grandiose things, right? Like, you have Firestarter, you're going to use them to like bring down the shop, or you're going to shining, you're going to like save everybody for the true knot, or whatever it is. But in I Know What You Need, he just wants to make her fall in love with him. Yeah. That's all he wants to do with this power. And to me, that's, as psycho fucked up as it is also super romantic. And so I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And I don't think many people look at that story that way. I think most people, and obviously, like, once we find out what his deal is, like, again, not into it, but it's that buildup of this character. And so I think, you have I'm studying it in 1976 when the story was first published in Cosmopolitan magazine, because I think for narrative reasons, it kind of has to be, because if the internet exists, the story kind of doesn't work. Yeah. But I also just I think that aesthetic is important to that story. I think it's this very beautiful time and place. And then the cherry on top is the University of Maine has agreed to let me film there. So I will be filming this short film in the exact locations mentioned in the story. So the library that first scene is in will be in that actual library in University of Maine, which it gave me goosebumps just to say it, because as a constant reader, hot dog, what an opportunity.
I'm very excited. After reading it, you had mentioned in your Indiegogo campaign video that because it is going to be a Stephen King story told through your eyes. It's seeing this story from a woman's perspective. How do you feel like that is going to, how strongly do you think that's going to impact the final vision?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting because, like I mentioned, I don't think the majority of women have that view on this character. I think you don't, because I honestly thought we covered Psycho on the podcast. And until then, like, I had thought really I was the only person who was into Norman Bates. And then all these other women were like, nope, into it. And I'm like, okay, it's not just me. I think, there is this very uncomfortable, he is using her in a way, and there is this, very stalkery, manipulative, of course, angle to it. And so I think it's a different way to look at it. I feel like this way of looking at Edward as kind of a sympathetic character and looking at it as more of a love story than a horror story, although there, of course, are horror elements to it. And so although it will be dialogue-wise faithful to the story completely, I think the feeling of it will be unique to me because I don't know. And that, like I mentioned, there are all these different adaptations that do it differently. And I want this to be Julia's version of the story, which is what all of these dollar babies are, right? That's the way you want to tell the story. And so mine's going to be unique. And I'm interested to talk to other people about the story because I don't think anybody sees it the way I do. What did you think about it?
I was this is not going to surprise Josh in the least because of how I responded to Misery and Annie Wilkes. I was so nervous to talk to you today because I was reading this story and I was kind of having these weird emotional experiences when Liz was finding out kind of, the story was picking up and I was like, well, I mean, if that happened to me, part of me would kind of be like, okay, cool. Yeah, sweet. I love how, thoughtful you are and you know exactly what I want. And I was trying to figure out, is there something wrong with me?
Right.
So I am excited.
Because it is this kind of perfect lover, right? Like they know what you want before you know that. And so is there anything wrong with that? And then if you take that kind of further, I think about what if Edward's plan had completely worked? And now he's kind of stuck in this role for the rest of his life that's not really him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like living in this house that's not really what he is. And he's hiding himself. And so he kind of makes a prisoner of himself in doing this as well, which is interesting. He's what a deep, complex character. And and it's great that he's just still in the midst of it, all kind of a fuck up. Like there's so many things it does, like it gives all these tells that gives himself away. And I'm like, Edward, man, what are you doing?
He is not smooth.
No, he is
but
not.
I think that's what I like about him because you see from his appearance, first off, he doesn't really have it together.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that doesn't really have it together, all of a sudden having everything right, but then inside know that that's not really who they are. So I'm sympathetic to him. I'm sympathetic to her. I'm sympathetic to Alice, who I think quite possibly is in love with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I would buy that.
It's so, I love that idea of Edward trapping himself because it just gives it this added twisted romantic layer. I'm so excited to see what you do.
and I'm really glad that you keep using the word sympathetic because that is something I feel like an adaptation could easily miss in regards to Edward. I mean, for instance, without diving too deep into all of the details of the book, like when she goes through his closet, it is clear that he still doesn't understand everything about what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's still learning. And there is something you can see it's him trying his best, even though he just doesn't realize his best is real fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's completely it. Uh-huh.
And I think that's amazing. The Alice's story and Alice's role to play in it, I think is fantastic. Because that's also that scene between them in that reveal is so truthful. Like, is somebody really saying, I'm going to tell you some stuff you don't want to know, and seeing them hash it out that way and it not turn into the tropey, you give me this piece of information and I storm out without all the rest of it. And then the scare happens.
Well, it is a very talky story.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm not afraid of at all. My favorite kind of movies are kind of people in rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So something like The Breakfast Club or 12 Angry Men or something where it's just about these characters. And so I'm not, and because I want it to feel as authentically 70s, pacing in the 70s wasn't as fast as it is now.
Yeah.
Like, it's a slower pace, and they're not afraid to kind of hang on moments and hang on conversation. So that's kind of what I'm emulating. And that scene between them, Alice and Elizabeth, like a long scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what though? Like, I don't want it to be this kind of flashy, like flash to the car accident, flash to the craziness. Like, I don't really need that. I feel like just having them talk and see would be enough.
I have one more specific plot related question for you.
Gotcha.
When the scene in Edward's apartment,
yeah,
do you think, this just occurred to me because you talked about him making a prisoner of himself. Do you think when that reveal happens, like in the dialogue, it's very aggressive, but do you think there's a sense of relief in him at that moment?
No, I don't think so. I've never really thought about that, but I feel like he's so thrown off. I feel like for something who he should have known, right? Like, he knows everything. Why did he not know that she was coming? Of course he should have known, but he doesn't. And I think the one, because as I said, I'm trying to keep it very faithful, but the one change that I felt strongly I needed to make was at the end, Elizabeth doesn't reply. Like, he says what he says, and she leaves. And I'm like, no. She's got to say what she feels. And so that's the one that I was like, that's got to be different.
Nice.
But everything else is the kind of the same.
I like that change a lot.
She never gets to see how she feels about him, really. She's a very interesting character because she's very passive. And she just kind of floats from Edward to Alice to Tony to like whoever really is pushing her. And she, we talk about how pushy Tony is and how pushy Edward is, and she's just being pushed along. And I think, it's important to say at the end that she's not going to take that anymore.
Now, if people want to see your Dollar Baby, well, they're going to have to be a part of your Indiegogo campaign. So can you tell us a little bit about your Indiegogo campaign and how it came to be that you put this all together?
I loved I Know What You Need. It's my very favorite short story. And I got a wild hair to be like, I wonder if I can adapt this story. So I emailed that you can go on StephenKing.com. They have a Dollar Baby tab, and they have the shorts that are up there for adaptation. And then you just send in a letter, and I got a reply. So I really kind of expected not to. And I was very surprised. And it was, it was just kind of quickly. And so it's this, but there's a contract and you do sign it with Stephen King, and you send $1 to his house, and the rules are very stringent. So has to be a year contract, 45 minutes or under, nonprofit, non-broadcast. So you can't sell it. You can't show it online. It has to be only in film festivals or private screenings, which is why through the Indiegogo campaign that you can, when you want to see the film, it's a live stream instead of a link. And because these are all very specific things that you have to go by. And so I asked, and I felt like, I believe in, like, you get in life what you have the courage to ask for. And I think most people just wouldn't ask. And I just asked, and I got a yes. So then I asked University of Maine, and they said yes. And then I was like, well, that's great. So that's a big bonus because I know how exciting that is as a constant reader. Yeah. So then I actually was going to launch in April of 2020, and then that seemed like a very bad time to launch. So I waited a bit, and then I got my contract extended for another year. And so I know still it's an awkward time to launch something like this because people we're in a pandemic, and a lot of people have lost their jobs or unemployment. And I understand. And I feel awkward about that, but I also feel like A, it's a year contract, so it's now or never. And B, if 2020 isn't the year to chase your dreams, I don't know when is.
Absolutely.
This is something, it's been so grim, and this is something that I have hope for, something I'm looking forward to. It's something okay, things may be as they are, but I get to make my favorite Stephen King short, and that is enough to kind of get me through. And hopefully the Indiegogo will succeed, and then that'll go forward. But that's yet. It remains to be seen. This is recorded at a time where we do not know yet what will happen, what the outcome is. But perhaps you in the future will already know the outcome.
I think right now, too, like for me personally, even despite the hardships that COVID has caused, I really now more than ever want to support people in their projects. So even though it seems like people might not be as willing to put money out there, I feel like a lot of people are into that. They're like, yeah, it makes me feel good to support something that an individual is doing. So I'm very hopeful that you will get all that.
Thank you. Well, I think also, sharing is just as important. What crowdfunding is really about is just spreading the word. And, thank you for helping me do that with this as well. But, it's just about being online and being on Twitter and being on Instagram and being on Facebook and talking to people and responding to people. And it becomes kind of like a full-time, part-time job where you're like, okay, I'm doing my job. I'm doing this. This is my job for now. And really, but, it's such a delight to me because this is my passion. And if you look back on my social media feed, you will see for the past 2.5 years, I have a picture with everyone I've read. And then, here are my Stephen King Sunday posts that I do every Sunday. And so it's not coming from some place who just wants to make like a quick buck on a Stephen King thing. I'm like, this is coming from the heart, guys. Please help me make this thing. And I think that I can make it great.
I also think you can make it great. I'm very excited to follow you along this journey, and I'm glad that I assume as you get into production, we'll see some behind the scenes stuff as everything starts going up. And
sure, and I'm very excited for casting as well because I feel like you only have 3 characters, right?
Yeah.
So you have to pick some. They have to be spot on. Because I remember my dad, when he was reading the script, the scene where she first goes into Edward's apartment, and there's the kind of a passage about how things don't look right, and like so she can tell something's off just from like now she's looking at it from a different perspective. My dad was like, I don't think an actress could do that, and I was like, oh, I think they can. I have faith in them. As an actor, I know, like I don't know if I could portray it properly, but someone can.
But that's going to be a huge task to undertake.
But I've never cast a film before, so I'm really looking forward to it and finding the characters that kind of fit in my head. Right now, I kind of see Christine era Keith Gordon as Edward is kind of in my head.
Nice.
But Keith Gordon's always in my head.
So after this project is complete, because if I remember right, the plan for actual on-site filming and everything is October 2021. Like a year
summer 2021.
Summer 2021.
So it'll be in the middle when all the students are gone. We'll be filming in those dorms as well. And you can go online and look at the dorms. They're amazing. They look like they're from 1976. Like it's so perfect. Oh, it makes my heart so happy.
That's amazing. So what is, after you are all done and this is complete, what's the next step? What's the next plan for this?
So then it goes into film festivals and does that run. And then it gets sent to Stephen King and he watches it. And I don't know if he answers or what, but it's, the Frank Darabont dream that we all have as Dollar Baby filmmakers is that you'll make something good enough to make his ears perk up,
And then he's going to send you a letter back and he's like, this is great, but you didn't have a father shoot his child in a van and then get out. So I'm sorry, it's not going to be good enough.
Well, he's got some dark endings too.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Cujo ain't no joke, man.
Oh,
damn,
Jesus.
though.
Covering that book's going to be...
I can't.
The ending of Cujo is one of the movies that I'm like, I'm glad you changed that. Thank you for changing that.
Now, we've talked the hardships that COVID has really put us under this past year, with so many creative outlets being almost impossible to do in the way we're used to doing them. What effect do you see this pandemic having on the entertainment industry?
That's a really depressing question. I'm
it
sorry.
It really is.
Because it's movies are cinema, especially because out of print. My film is all about the importance of revival cinema, watching it with an audience. That's the whole thing. So to have that, which is my favorite thing in the world, taken away, and then kind of indefinitely, and then even when it does come back, it's like, drip drab, social distancing, won't be full kind of stuff. Like it's been heartbreaking to me. And to think of all of the tiny theaters that aren't going to open back up, it really breaks my heart. Like I feel it hurt my heart, and I don't want that to happen, and I don't know how it doesn't. So when I first when it first happened in March, I have this really bad habit of just I see everything unfold really far in the future. So then I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good, because there's the Hollywood studios that will do what they do. Independent filmmakers will probably not be affected too much, but it is the cinemas themselves that are the things that are the most upsetting to me, because of course I've been watching movies on my laptop and on my TV, and I have a VHS collection that I've been watching, but sitting by myself watching a movie doesn't feel good. it feels kind of sad. And like I went to the drive-in, which I'm so happy that the drive-ins are like rolling in dough now. Yay for that. That makes me very happy. But I went to the drive-in by myself. And then it was even more depressing because I was like, oh, I'm surrounded by all these people, but I can't see or hear anybody. And now I'm just in my own little car by myself. I was like, oh, this is even sadder. So, my heart really goes out to the independent cinemas that are not going to come back, because I really wish we would get things rolling so we could really, but I just know just now, I think they are re-shutting down stuff in Canada. So I know the Mayfair Mayfair Theatre are awesome up there in Ottawa, and I know they just had to re-shut down. So even like opening and the closing. So, but then like in London, the Prince Charles is just opening. So it's just kind of all over the place, but America is just so far behind that it's going to be a while.
Yeah. Well, let's end things on a bit of a higher note.
Okay. We're not going to do like a mist ending.
Yeah, no.
Talk about how all cinemas are dying.
Right. Well, that's it.
And then my house burns down.
Yeah, right.
Burn it all down, baby.
What interests you and inspires you right now?
The most fascinating thing about doing this crowdfunding campaign has been people who I thought had forgotten about me in my life coming forward to support me, which has been incredible. A woman who I haven't seen since I was 17 years old, she donated and she got back in touch with me, and it's just like, it's so amazing what you're doing. So that, and then the constant readers being behind it, because that's this thing where when I first started, like, I don't know, like that's kind of the make or break point. Is it something that the Stephen King fans are going to be behind? And everyone has been. And so I'm so inspired by all of these folks who are willing to come together and support someone who has this silly dream. And I know it, on the grand scheme of things, making a Stephen King film, whatever, that's no, bigger fish to fry. But in my life, it means so much. And so something that can give an artist hope when it looks quite hopeless, I think that's pretty cool.
That's a fantastic answer. And I want to thank you again, Julia, for making the time to come talk to us. I'm so happy we could have this conversation. And I'm so happy that we can find a way to be a part of and support you on this journey. Because I think I speak for CM when I think we both believe you are going to crush it.
And
thank you.
And when we say support you on this journey, we actually mean that, because Derry Public Radio is definitely going to donate to your campaign. We have amazing fans. I think you can say that about any Stephen King fan.
Right, yeah.
And they support us so wonderfully. We are going to pay it forward, and we are going to donate to you. And we encourage our fans to follow our lead and check out your campaign.
Wow, thank you, guys. It's been, I feel so good now. Now my heart feels happy. Thank you.
Fantastic.
And I will talk about Stephen King literally all day. So anytime you want me on there, I will be on there quite happily.
Absolutely.
Well, it'd be awesome to talk to you again after you've completed your journey and just see how, talk about how things went and what you got out of the experience.
How different it will be in my mind too on the screen.
Yeah. Julia, thank you so much one last time for joining us. It has been so delightful. That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. If you'd like more information about Julia Marchese and all of her amazing projects, we will link those in the show notes. If you'd like to donate to her Dollar Baby, head to Indiegogo and search for I Know What You Need. CM and I will be right there with you. Reminder, this campaign is only running until October 24th, so make those donations now. Until next time, for CM Alexander, this is Joshua Kahn, wishing you long days and pleasant nights.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to this bonus episode. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find out more about Julia at our website, juliamarchese.com. That's JuliaMarchese.com. And please check out her Dollar Baby campaign by going to Indiegogo.com and searching I Know What You Need. We will have a link to all of this on our social media, and if you'd like more information, please feel free to email us and we can point you in the right direction. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.